Hey everyone, welcome back. Johnny B here with devslopes.com. In the last lesson, we worked on getting our login flow set up and being able to select channels and updating our chat VC info a little bit. And so we're going to continue on in that direction. And in this lesson, we're actually going to write our functions to be able to fetch the messages stored on our API. And I know right now that you guys aren't going to have any messages on your servers yet because we haven't gotten to that point yet, but that's okay. I'll show you what the returning JSON and everything will look like. All right, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is know what our model needs to look like. So if we open up Postman, and if you find the find all messages for channel web request, we can take a look at it. It is a get web request, so we're just retrieving information. The header is a bearer header, so we need to be logged in with an authorization token to access it. And the URL is message/by-channel and then the channel ID. All right. So if you check out your Mongo database here, just gonna open up right here on our MLabs. So I'm here in the collections, or the channels collection, and this shows our channels that we have. All right, so you can see here we have the name of the channel is general, the description, and the OID right here. That's the channel ID that we're going to be using in our app to as a unique identifier. All right. So, and that unique identifier is what we pass into the API request to retrieve the messages. And if I press send, then this is what is returned. It's an array of JSON objects, and each JSON object represents a chat message. And so the things that we need to account for in our model is the ID, message body, user ID, channel ID, username, user avatar, and avatar color, and the timestamp. All right, so we need the user ID and username and all that information to be able to make a clear indication of who it is that is sending the message. Okay, and you'll see here this timestamp. We'll get to this later. The server returns it in a format that we'll have to convert later on. But anyways, yeah, so these are the properties of our model that we need to account for. So let's go ahead and create that model. We're going to come up here to model and say right click on model group and say new file. And this is going to be a Swift file, and we're going to call it message. Okay, I'm going to create it. All right, and just like our channel, this is going to be a structure, and we're going to call it message. And we're just going to type out all of our properties of our struct that we need. So I'm going to say public, private, set, oops, not capitalized, set, var, message, that's a string. And then I'm going to just copy this, whoopsie. Let's see, how many are there? I'm going to open Postman. And we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we need one more. All right, and those are user name, channel ID, user avatar color, ID, and timestamp. Let's see, did I miss one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I guess there's only 7. All right, so that looks good. Now we have our model that we'll be able to use to save objects. All right, so let's go ahead and now create the Alamofire request, web request that emulates the Postman that we just saw, and work on that. So to do that, we are going to need a URL constant endpoint. So let's go ahead and open up our utilities and go to constants. And here under URLs, just going to copy this guy here, paste it, and this is going to be URL get messages. All right, the base URL, and then it is message/by channel. All right, I'm gonna save that. And then let's go into our message service.swift, and we're going to create a new function to get all messages. All right, so we're going to say find all messages for channel. Okay, and we're going to pass into that a channel ID, because that's what we need to be able to make the API requests. So we're going to say channel ID, and that's going to be a string. And then we're going to have our completion handler. So I'm going to say completion at escaping, oops, and completion handler. Then close the bottom pane. Give us some room here. All right, let's do this. We're going to say Alamo fire.request. And this is the request we want. The URL is the one that we just created, URL_get messages. The method, remember this one is a get. The parameters are nil. We don't have a body to pass. The encoding is JSON encoding.default. And the headers, we do need this to be a bearer header. There we go. And we want the response to come back in the form of JSON. Then for the closure, I'm going to press return and change its name to response and encode. Get rid of that. Alrighty, nice. So now we're going to say if response.result.error is equal to nil, then we're going to do something. Else, we are going to say completion is false. And then we are going to, actually I want to put the debug above that. So we're going to debug print the error. So we're going to say response.result.error as any. Then we're going to set completion to false. But if we are successful, then we are going to loop through the JSON objects in our response and parse out the properties of a message that we need, all of these. Then we're going to create a new message, and then we're going to append it to an array of messages that we're going to create right here. So messages is equal to an array of message and initialize. Okay, so we're only going to be storing the messages for one channel at a time. So once we select one channel, we're going to load up the messages for that channel. And then after, and then if we select a different channel, we're going to erase the messages, the current messages, and then replace that with the new channel's messages. So we're actually going to need a clear messages function right here too. So we're going to say func clear messages, and that's going to be messages dot remove all. There we go. And so right here, we can actually, we'll clear the messages here. We're going to say self.clear messages. There we go. And then now we're going to go through the parsing part. So we're going to say, so remember, first step is to get the data and then turn that data into a JSON object using swifty.json. So I'm going to say guard let data equal response.data else return. And then we're going to say if let JSON is equal to JSON, and we use the swifty.json initializer right here, and the data is the data that we just created, and that is going to be of type array. Okay, so now we have an array of JSON objects. So now we're going to loop through. We're going to say for item in JSON. So just like we saw in Postman. So this would be the JSON object that we just created. Now we're going to go through and we're going to say for each of these in it, go through and extract the properties for each one. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to say let message body equal item, and the key is called message body, and that's going to be of type string value. All right, and since there's quite a few of these, I'm going to just kind of zip through. I'm going to copy and paste. So there's 7, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this is going to be channel ID. This one's going to be ID. This one's going to be user name. This one's going to be user avatar. This is going to be user avatar color. And this one's going to be timestamp. All right, now we got to go through and switch up all of the keys. So this key is channel ID. This key is underscore ID. The username key is username. The user avatar key is user avatar. The user avatar color key is user avatar color. And the timestamp key is timestamp. All right, there we go. So now we have all of the properties in variables that we need, so we can create a new message. So I'm going to say let message equal message with the struct initializer, and the message is message body. The username is user name. The channel ID is channel ID. The user avatar is user avatar. The user avatar color is user avatar color. The ID is ID, and the timestamp is timestamp. Whoo-wee, alrighty, so we are parsing through each individual item in JSON. We are grabbing out the information and creating a new message object with that information, and then we can append that new one that we just created to messages array. So we're going to say self.messages.append, and the new element is that message that we just created. All right, and then we can say completion is true. All right, gonna go ahead and delete these spaces, and I'm gonna save that. And I think that that pretty much covers it. That looks pretty good. So to test this, let's go ahead and actually print this data out. I'm gonna say I'm gonna say print self.messages. Okay, I'm gonna save this. And then we're going to jump over to our chat VC, actually, because once we log in, the first thing we do is we go and we find all the channels, right? So if we go and we get all of the channels, there are either going to be no channels if this is like the very first time you have logged into the app and no one has created channels before. So there could be no channels, or there could be some channels. If there are no channels, then we don't want to try and go and get messages, because there's no channel, there's no messages. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a check for that. So we're gonna say if message service dot instance dot channels dot count is greater than 0. So we've logged in, we've gotten all of our channels, and if there are more than 0, if there is at least 1, what we're going to do is we're going to set the message service dot instance dot selected channel equal to the first one, the message service dot instance dot channels, the 0th item. So this is if you have been logged in before and then you re-enter the app. This is just going to by default set the first channel as the selected one. All right, so we're going to say that, and then we're going to say self.update with channel. If there are no channels, we're going to go ahead and change our self.channel name label .text to say no channels yet. Okay, so we log in, we find all of the channels. If there's at least one channel, then we set our selected channel equal to it. And then we're going to update the channel. Then we're going to call this update with channel. So here in update with channel, what do we want to do? Well, we're going to create a new function called get messages. And so this is where we call the function that we just created. So I'm going to say func get messages. And here we're going to say, so we're going to call the function, we need a channel ID, right? So we're going to first unwrap that channel ID. So we're going to say guard let channel ID equal message service dot instance dot selected channel dot channel ID, or select channel dot ID. There we go. Else we are going to return. Okay, so now we have the channel ID, the selected channel ID. Gonna create some space for us here. And now we can call the get messages function. So I'm going to say message service dot instance dot find all messages for channel, and the channel that we want to retrieve messages for is our channel ID that we just unwrapped. Completion. I'm going to change to success, and right now we're not doing anything with that information, but let's put our get messages function right here and update with channel. So get messages, and that should work for us. So I'm going to run this, and while it's coming up, I'm going to walk you through the flow once again. All right, so we log in, we do our find all channel function, which returns an array of functions. If there's at least one function, then we are going to set the selected channel equal to the 0th channel. Then we're going to update with channel. What that does is we set our channel name, and we attempt to get messages. When we attempt to get messages, we are getting the channel ID from our selected channel, and then we're passing that into find all message for channel, where we loop through. If there are any messages, then we loop through and extract the information that we need, and then create new message objects and add them to our messages array in message service. And so we said to print it out. So let's see if we got anything here. You know what? I accidentally put the completion in the wrong place. So I have it inside of the for loop. So I'm going to cut these two lines, and these should actually be outside of the, there we go. All right, so let's try that again. Okay, so that wasn't the only mistake I made. I made a rather large one right here. The URL that we need to ping is not just this, right? The URL should also have appended at the end of it the channel ID. So I'm going to do some string interpolation. I'm going to say URL get messages, and then we also need to tack onto it the channel ID string that we have passed into it. So I'm going to say channel ID. There we go. Save that and run. All right, so third time's the charm. Finally, we are seeing the message data that is being printed out. So that is good. You can see here we have user avatar color, user name is Emma, the message, hey Johnny, what's going on? So yeah, that's working out well. So just to recap what we did in this lesson, we created a model for the messages. We created a function in our message service.swift to go and retrieve all of the messages for a given channel. Then in our chat VC, we did a little bit of work and created a few more functions so that when we log in, we do a check for any chat for more than one channel. We select a channel, and then we update the view based on which channel is selected. And that is where we created our new function for get messages, which goes and fetches the messages for a selected channel. All right, so things are looking good. Hope you guys are having fun. And in the next lesson, we're going to work on adding messages so that you guys can actually see something be returned with that function. And yeah, so we're making great progress, and I'm going to finish up here by adding and committing our changes, and then I'll see you guys in the next one.